My beloved child. Stop scrolling for just a moment. There is a reason your eyes landed here instead of somewhere else. You did not arrive by accident. What you are about to hear is not meant to frighten you but to awaken something that has been quietly waiting inside your heart. There is a story unfolding beyond what your natural eyes can see, and heaven has allowed a glimpse of it to reach you today. Stay with these words until the very end because each sentence unlocks another piece of a mystery that has been forming long before this moment. Something extraordinary has already begun, even if you cannot yet recognize its shape. I have watched every silent prayer you whispered when no one else noticed. I have counted every tear that fell after everyone around you believed you were strong enough to carry everything alone. I have remained beside you through every unanswered question, every lonely night, every moment you wondered whether anyone truly understood your heart. You believed certain chapters had ended forever, yet heaven never closed the book. Some pages were simply waiting for the right time to be turned. Today I reveal only part of what has happened. Your soul has been speaking a language that words could never fully express. While you were living ordinary moments, something extraordinary was moving behind the scenes. Invisible threads have been weaving together events that seemed unrelated. Conversations you never heard, thoughts you never witnessed, emotions hidden behind smiles, all of them have quietly pointed toward this very moment. Pause again. Do you feel that strange pull inside your spirit? That gentle feeling telling you not to leave? Listen carefully. Someone who carries a deep connection with your future recently discovered something about you that completely changed the direction of their heart. Not because of rumors. Not because of appearances. Not because someone convinced them. But because truth has a way of finding those whose hearts are finally ready to receive it. You have wondered why certain doors closed unexpectedly. You questioned why people disappeared without explanation. You asked why situations shifted just when you believed everything was becoming stable. What seemed like confusion was often divine protection guiding unseen events beyond your understanding. Even now, there are details you cannot see. That is why you must not rush away from this message. Each moment reveals another hidden layer. The one your heart has unknowingly been preparing to meet has not lived a simple journey. Their path has been filled with voices competing for attention. Some encouraged them. Others distracted them. Some offered comfort while quietly pulling them away from their deepest purpose. Many smiled in front of them while planting uncertainty behind their back. They believed every voice deserved equal trust. Until recently. Something changed. It did not happen through a dramatic argument. It was not caused by revenge. It was not created by anger. It happened because light has a remarkable way of exposing what darkness could no longer hide. Without realizing it, your story reached them in an unexpected way. Perhaps through a passing conversation. Perhaps through an old memory. Perhaps through something so ordinary that no one else considered it important. Yet heaven can transform ordinary moments into life-changing revelations. When they learned what had truly been hidden about your heart, silence surrounded them. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of realization. For the first time, they began questioning everything they had previously accepted as truth. Memories started replaying inside their mind. Words spoken months ago suddenly sounded different. Advice they once trusted no longer felt trustworthy. The opinions they carried about you began dissolving like morning mist beneath the rising sun. Stay with this message. Something greater is approaching. There are moments when heaven does not immediately answer every prayer because the people involved must first experience their own awakening. If I had forced understanding before wisdom was ready, lessons would have been forgotten. But now something has shifted inside this person's spirit. Their heart has started recognizing the difference between noise and truth. This awakening did not happen all at once. It came quietly. One thought became another. One realization opened the next. One unexpected detail uncovered another hidden piece. Little by little, the walls around their heart began to crack. Through those tiny openings, light entered. And once light enters, darkness struggles to remain convincing. My beloved child, many people judged your silence without understanding your battles. They interpreted your patience as weakness. They mistook your kindness for helplessness. They never realized how many storms you survived without announcing them to the world. Heaven saw every unseen victory. While others measured your worth through appearances, I measured it through faithfulness. While others noticed only your imperfections, I watched your courage continue growing despite disappointment. That unseen strength became part of the truth this person finally encountered. And what they discovered unsettled them more deeply than anyone around them realized. Because suddenly, the image they carried of you no longer matched reality. Everything shifted. Imagine standing before a beautiful painting after spending years believing it was only an unfinished sketch. Imagine hearing a melody you thought you already knew, only to realize you had never actually listened. That is what happened inside them. The truth about your heart became impossible to ignore. There were people nearby who preferred the old misunderstanding. Not because they hated you, but because confusion often feels safer than honesty. Truth asks people to change. Pride resists change. Some hoped this person would continue believing incomplete stories. Some quietly encouraged distance. Some suggested moving on without ever discovering the full picture. Yet every attempt to reinforce confusion only caused them to question things even more. When heaven begins revealing truth, even resistance becomes part of the revelation. Do not skip ahead in your thoughts. The most important part has not yet been revealed. One evening, while surrounded by ordinary routines, they experienced something difficult to explain. Nothing dramatic happened around them. The room looked the same. The voices sounded the same. Life appeared completely normal. Yet inside, everything was changing. A sentence spoken weeks earlier suddenly echoed with new meaning. A forgotten memory returned unexpectedly. An emotion they had buried beneath distractions rose quietly to the surface. Then came a realization they could no longer escape. What if everything I believed about this person was incomplete? That single question opened a door no one else knew existed. Once opened, It refused to close. The more they reflected, the clearer everything became. Your compassion suddenly made sense. Your distance suddenly made sense. Your patience suddenly made sense. Even your silence carried meaning they had never understood before. Every puzzle piece slowly found its proper place. And with each realization, someone else's influence over them became weaker. Not through force. Not through manipulation. Simply because truth possesses its own quiet authority. You may wonder why this matters. Because the people who influence our hearts often determine the direction of our lives. When someone discovers that certain voices have been leading them away from honesty, difficult decisions naturally follow. This is where heaven asks you to remain patient. Do not assume you know how every chapter ends. Do not mistake delay for absence. Many breakthroughs happen silently before they become visible. While you waited for signs, invisible decisions were already taking shape. Some choices begin inside the heart long before they appear in actions. That is exactly where this story now stands. The person connected to your future began separating truth from illusion. Every conversation became easier to evaluate. Every opinion was weighed differently. Every influence was examined through fresh eyes. Little by little, they recognized who consistently encouraged confusion. And who quietly respected truth. The difference became impossible to ignore. My beloved child, there are seasons when I allow hidden motives to reveal themselves naturally. I do not always expose everything at once. Sometimes hearts reveal themselves through time. Sometimes loyalty proves itself through patience. Sometimes love becomes visible only after distractions lose their power. This season has become one of revelation. Even people who believed they understood everything have started questioning themselves. Hearts are awakening. Masks are becoming heavier to wear. Pretending grows exhausting. Truth becomes increasingly peaceful. You have prayed for clarity. So has this person. Neither of you realized those prayers were slowly leading toward the same destination. Do you remember those moments when you almost gave up? When you whispered, "Maybe nothing is changing." Heaven heard those words. But while you looked toward closed doors, I was already opening pathways beyond your sight. That is why I ask you once again. Stay until the end. The greatest part of this story has not yet been spoken. Recently, they found themselves unable to ignore an uncomfortable feeling. Someone close to them kept speaking in ways that no longer felt genuine. The words sounded familiar. Yet something inside their spirit resisted accepting them. Questions appeared where certainty once lived. Why did these conversations always leave them feeling uneasy? Why did they feel further away from peace afterward? Why did thoughts of you keep returning despite every attempt to move forward? Heaven often speaks through peaceful conviction rather than loud interruption. This quiet conviction continued growing. Every day it became stronger. Every reflection uncovered another hidden layer. Eventually, one discovery changed everything. It was not shocking because it was dramatic. It was shocking because it explained so much. Suddenly they understood why certain misunderstandings had survived for so long. They recognized patterns they had previously ignored. Pieces connected. Moments aligned. Hidden intentions became easier to recognize. And deep within their heart, a decision quietly began forming. No announcement. No celebration. No public display. Just a deeply personal realization that some connections no longer belonged in the next chapter of their life. The moment that realization settled inside them, peace began replacing confusion. It felt unfamiliar, yet unmistakably real. My beloved child, do not misunderstand this message. This is not about celebrating someone's loss. It is about recognizing the freedom that comes when truth replaces illusion. Heaven never delights in broken relationships. But heaven rejoices whenever deception loses its influence. That difference matters. Never allow bitterness to become part of your own journey. Your assignment has always been different. Continue becoming the person I created you to be. Continue walking with integrity when no one applauds. Continue choosing kindness when easier paths appear. Continue believing that what is built upon truth cannot remain hidden forever. Because what is happening now reaches far beyond one conversation. Far beyond one decision. Far beyond one relationship. Something much larger has begun moving. And before the next revelation unfolds, before you understand why this person could no longer ignore what they had learned, before you discover the quiet choice they made after everyone else had gone home, there is one final truth you must hear. They have not told anyone everything they discovered. Not yet. They are still carrying one question inside their heart. One question only heaven currently knows. The answer to that question will determine everything that happens next. And when it is finally revealed, nothing between your stories will ever feel the same again. My beloved child, do not look away now. If your heart has remained with this message until this moment, it is because the next part carries a revelation that was never meant to arrive before its appointed time. You have sensed that something significant has been unfolding beyond your sight, and you were right. Heaven has not been silent. It has been preparing hearts in places you could never reach on your own. Stay here a little longer. Every sentence from this moment forward uncovers another hidden layer, and by the end of this chapter, you will understand why everything has felt so unusual. The question resting inside your soulmate's heart refused to disappear. They tried to distract themselves with routines. They buried themselves in responsibilities. They told themselves they were imagining things. Yet every attempt to silence that inner voice only made it speak more clearly. It was not a loud voice. It was gentle. Persistent. Peaceful. The kind of whisper that can only come when truth begins knocking on the door of someone's spirit. Late one evening, after the noise of the day had finally faded, they found themselves sitting alone. The room was quiet, yet their thoughts were louder than ever before. They replayed conversations they once dismissed. Faces drifted through their memory. Every opinion they had accepted without question suddenly felt uncertain. For the first time in a long time, they stopped asking what everyone else believed and started asking what their own heart truly knew. That single decision changed everything. Because when someone sincerely seeks truth, heaven begins removing the fog one layer at a time. They remembered something someone had said about you many months ago. At the time, they accepted it without hesitation. But now, something felt wrong. The words no longer fit the person they were beginning to understand. Instead of bringing clarity, those old opinions suddenly created discomfort. They wondered why they had never questioned them before. They wondered why someone had seemed so determined to shape the way they viewed you. Questions multiplied. The more they reflected, the more obvious the pattern became. Certain people always seemed uncomfortable whenever your name entered the conversation. Certain people quickly changed the subject. Others laughed things away. Some offered advice that sounded helpful on the surface but quietly pulled them further from understanding your heart. None of these moments seemed important individually. Together, they painted a completely different picture. Pause here for just a moment. Can you feel how every piece has been leading here? Nothing was random. Nothing escaped heaven's attention. While you wondered whether anyone saw your true heart, someone else's eyes were slowly opening. The realization came unexpectedly. It arrived through something incredibly ordinary. A forgotten message. A familiar memory. A passing remark. The smallest detail often carries the greatest revelation because truth rarely needs dramatic entrances. It simply waits for the perfect moment. When that moment arrived, they quietly whispered to themselves, "I don't think I ever really knew the full story." Those words echoed inside them long after the room became silent. Sleep became difficult. Not because of fear. Because their conscience had awakened. The heart cannot rest comfortably once it realizes it may have misunderstood someone who deserved compassion instead of distance. Heaven was not condemning them. Heaven was inviting them into wisdom. There is a difference. Many people spend their lives protecting their pride. Very few have the courage to admit they may have been wrong. That courage began growing inside them. Slowly. Patiently. Like the first light before sunrise. It did not blind them. It guided them. As understanding increased, another realization quietly appeared. Someone in their life had consistently benefited from the misunderstanding surrounding you. At first they rejected the thought. No. That can't be true. Surely it was only coincidence. Surely there was another explanation. But every memory they revisited pointed toward the same uncomfortable conclusion. Every conversation followed a similar pattern. Every warning about you lacked genuine evidence. Every opinion seemed designed to create distance rather than understanding. The realization became impossible to ignore. For several days they said nothing. They observed. They listened carefully. Instead of reacting emotionally, they watched people's actions. Something fascinating happened. Without anyone realizing it, hidden intentions slowly revealed themselves. Some individuals became unusually nervous whenever your name surfaced. Others immediately redirected the conversation. One person in particular seemed determined to keep old misunderstandings alive. That reaction spoke louder than words ever could. Heaven often reveals truth through patterns rather than dramatic miracles. Your soulmate began seeing those patterns everywhere. They noticed how peaceful they felt whenever they ignored negative voices. They noticed how unsettled they became whenever they listened to them. Peace became the compass. Confusion became the warning. That distinction transformed everything. My beloved child, never underestimate the power of quiet discernment. It changes destinies. The strongest spiritual breakthroughs often happen without applause. No crowds. No celebrations. Only one heart choosing truth over comfort. That is exactly what was happening. Each passing day strengthened their conviction. Each passing day weakened the influence certain people once held over them. Then came the conversation heaven had quietly prepared. It was not planned. It happened naturally. Someone casually repeated another old assumption about you, expecting agreement. Instead, silence filled the room. Your soulmate didn't respond immediately. They simply listened. For the first time, they noticed inconsistencies they had ignored before. The story sounded rehearsed. The emotion felt forced. The concern no longer seemed sincere. Deep inside, something whispered. This isn't honesty. That whisper carried more authority than every loud opinion surrounding it. When the conversation ended, they walked away with a heart heavier than before, but also clearer than ever. They finally admitted something they had resisted for a long time. I've been listening to the wrong voices. Those words were never spoken aloud. Yet heaven heard them. And in that quiet confession, a chain that had silently held them began breaking apart. Not dramatically. Not instantly. But unmistakably. From that day forward, they started creating gentle distance. Fewer conversations. Fewer explanations. Fewer opportunities for confusion to grow. Others noticed. Some asked questions. Some became frustrated. Some attempted to regain influence. Yet something inside your soulmate had already changed. Once wisdom enters the heart, old manipulation loses much of its power. Still, one final test remained. The very person who had contributed most to the misunderstanding unexpectedly reached out again. The timing seemed strange. Almost too convenient. They smiled. They spoke kindly. They acted as though nothing had changed. But your soulmate was no longer seeing with yesterday's eyes. They listened carefully. Every sentence. Every pause. Every subtle attempt to redirect attention. What once sounded persuasive now felt strangely empty. It was then that the truth settled fully into their spirit. Some connections exist for a season. Others quietly expire when their purpose ends. This realization did not fill them with anger. It filled them with peace. A peaceful certainty that protecting the future sometimes requires letting go of influences rooted in the past. No dramatic confrontation followed. No harsh words. No revenge. Simply a quiet decision made in the deepest place of the heart. A decision that certain voices would no longer determine the direction of their life. My beloved child. That decision was never truly about another person. It was about becoming the version of themselves heaven had always intended them to become. And unknown to them. That quiet choice created movement in places they could not yet imagine. Doors that had remained closed began trembling. Conversations not yet spoken started preparing themselves. Hearts separated by misunderstanding slowly moved toward unexpected clarity. Yet there remains one final revelation I cannot uncover just yet. Because at this very moment, your soulmate is standing at the edge of another decision. One that involves reaching toward a truth they once believed was forever out of reach. The first step has already formed in their heart. The second step will change the story in ways neither of you could possibly expect. And when that moment finally arrives, heaven will reveal why every delay, every misunderstanding, and every unanswered prayer was preparing both of you for something far greater than either heart imagined.